I offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual master who saved me from the darkness of ignorance, and to all of you. You're all great souls, and I feel very honored to be in your presence tonight. We were talking yesterday about ignorance, that is, a few of us who had gone out into Toronto to present Bhagavad Gita in various parts of the city. People are actually very interested in Bhagavad Gita, and we're finding an even greater interest in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a larger book. The Bhagavad Gita is 700 verses, and the Srimad Bhagavatam, depending on how you divide them up, is 18,000. And the Srimad Bhagavatam was written under circumstances that all of us can relate to. The king, Parikshit, had 7 days to live. How many days do we have to live? No, we have 7 also. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's going to be one of those days. Saturday mornings, Tuesday, whatever it is. We're all in the same boat. Have you ever heard that before? Helps to know. We can commiserate with one another because we go through all the same kinds of sufferings. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the topmost yogi is one who can show compassion to others. He says, Atmau pamyena sarvatra samam pashiti yorjana sukham vayadi vadukam yogi paramo mata. Parama, as you know, means the highest. Mataha, Krishna says, this is my opinion. My opinion is that the parama yogi is one atmau pamyena sarvatra, that he or she has compassion for all others, empathy. Pathy means to feel, and M means what's inside. We know what's inside us, and we can understand that everyone's going through the same kind of struggles. When they become attached to getting more in life and they don't want to lose it, it's a conundrum because we work hard to get more, and as soon as we get it, then we're in anxiety because we don't want to lose it. Does that sound familiar? And when we lose something, we feel separation from it. So the Bhagavad Gita, or Krishna, who speaks the Bhagavad Gita, comes to tell us that real happiness comes from within our own self and our connection with the Supreme. When Arjuna asked Krishna, what's the symptom of a self-realized person? Krishna says, a self-realized person is one who's fixed in consciousness. He's called a sthita prajna. And he says one who can withdraw the senses from their objects, and he describes the mind as a factory. It's always producing more and more desires, like a conveyor belt where options of various colors, sizes are coming to us. And at the same time, the person can find satisfaction in the self. That person, he says, is fixed in consciousness. Feels satisfied wherever he or she is. It doesn't matter in the environment or how much wealth one has. After all, we all know wealth is a never-ending struggle, isn't it? If somebody gives you $1 million, Canadian, and even that, it made you disappointed, right? Like, could it have been something else? So then you get $1 million and you think, the guy's a billionaire, he could have given me a little more. It's not so much $1 million. We're never satisfied on the material level because we're spiritual and we can't relate to material possessions. Although Krishna also isn't impractical. He never tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita to walk away from the world because, as we know, that's what Arjuna wanted to do. That was his solution, and that's what a lot of people think when they get frustrated in the world. They think, let me just give everything up. Well, Krishna tells Arjuna that nahi kashit shanamapi jatu tishatya karmakrit karyate yavasha karma sava prakriti jaragunani. He says, if you give this up, you'll go do something else and you're going to come back to what you're used to anyway. It's your nature, Arjuna. You can't stop it. But then he gives the solution in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita of how to be happy in this world and not become entangled, to have enlightened engagement with the world. He says, live like a lotus. Doesn't that sound like a good tattoo? People ask you, what do you mean live like a lotus? Krishna says, Brahmanyadaya karmani sangam tyakva karotiya lipyatena sapapena padma patram ivambasa. So the lotus is called Padmaja. It grows out of the mud, Padma. Ja means to be born. And it grows to the top of the pond. And all of you who know lotuses, if you've ever visited one before in a pond, it's uncanny how the water, although it may splash onto the lotus, it can never stay. It rolls right off. And Krishna says, Brahmanyadaya karmani sangam tyakva karotiya. If you change your motive in life, then you change everything. Because if my motive is to control everything in my life, I'll be very disappointed. But if I give up that idea of control and say, it's already being controlled, things may seem out of my control, but it doesn't mean they're out of control. The world's always going on perfectly the way it should. Krishna is described in the Sri Upanishad. Om Purnam Madah Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. The personality of God is perfect and complete, and all emanations that come from the complete whole remain complete in themselves. There's a complete arrangement within nature for everything to go on. For instance, if you get a tiny cut, you can watch and marvel at how it just heals. It just comes together again. Did you do that? No, you just watched it. How did that happen? The whole world's like that. It's going on in spite of us. So Krishna says, find your place in the universe. You do have a place where you're always engaged, you're always joyful, and you never become entangled with the material world, and you can live like a lotus. Like what? Live like a lotus. Let's say it all together. And when you go home tonight and somebody who didn't come, they had to watch a cricket match or something, and say, what did that guy say? And you'll say. And then you walk into your room, close the door. And I'll think, hey, what is it about? It's about changing our motive inside. When we have the motive to do service, Krishna says, this is the highest path. There's the path of material enjoyment. And anyone in their right mind knows that that doesn't work. There are millions of songs about it, about how things didn't work out. Do they have those in Bollywood? Or is everything cheery? We have in America, we have country music, and people talk about, oh, I lost my hound dog, or my truck got stolen, and people sing the blues. There's poetry that goes back, classical poetry and history, where people talk about love lost, fortunes lost. Ozymandias, famous poem about a great king who controlled everyone, and now all that's left in the desert is the visage of his destroyed statue, worn away by the blasting sand over eons. And it's the mighty time that takes away everything from us. So materialism doesn't make sense. And then on the other side, if I say, I renounce the world, that's impractical, isn't it? If you go into the Bank of Canada and you say, I renounce this whole bank and all the money in it, that makes as much sense as saying I renounce the world, because it's not ours to renounce. So there's a middle path that Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita, and that is, take the path of service. Service is called what in Sanskrit? Seva. So we have a saying, your seva will save you. Because there's no way to interact with the world that we don't become frustrated unless we act according to our true nature. And our true nature is that we're aligned in service to the Supreme. That's what yoga means. That's what karma yoga means. When you put yoga on the end of anything like jnana yoga, mantra yoga, it means it's connecting to our original conscious source. So that brings me to the Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam takes up where the Bhagavad Gita leaves off. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, declare bankruptcy. Do you know what you do when you got too much debt? I hope nobody knows what you're supposed to do because it means it's happened to you. But there's a bankruptcy offering in America. If you get too much debt, you have a company, you go to the court and you say, please give me bankruptcy protection so I can reorganize. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, you'll never catch up in the material world. Too much karmic debt. So you come to me, just take shelter of me, I'll take care of it. So the Srimad Bhagavatam starts off by saying, here are the details. Here's how to live that life. And within the Bhagavatam, there are nested stories. And I began the class by telling the major theme of the story, which is a king, Parikshit, who was cursed to die within 7 days. He went back to his kingdom, and he walked out the door, sat down on the bank of the Ganges without his royal dress, and he began to inquire, what is my duty now that I have 7 days to live? And that's relevant to all of us, because I may have 70 years, but practically it's the same. It all comes in due course of time. So we have to answer this question, and the Srimad Bhagavatam does. So, Stephen Covey, did anybody read his book called The 7 Habits? 3 people? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12? One of the important concepts that he brings up in this book, this is very practical, isn't it? He says, start with the end in mind. Start with the end in mind. Figure out where you're trying to go and then work for that. And the Srimad Bhagavatam begins by Parikshit Maharaj asking his teacher, and there were many teachers there, but everyone stood back and gave deference to Shukadeva Goswami. And they offered him a seat of esteem. He was a 16-year-old boy, but he was fully enlightened from the teachings of his father, Srila Vyasadeva. And the king said, what is my duty now that I have 7 days to live? And Shukadeva answered in a very practical way. He said, whatever you do, whatever your occupation is, whatever part of the world you come from, it's all the same. Your duty is to remember Narayan at the time of death. In other words, remember God at the time of death. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that whatever we remember when we leave this body, that state we will attain without fail. The consciousness that we develop in this life is forcing us for an accommodation by material nature in the next life. So the Srimad Bhagavatam gives us this goal to work towards. What is the end of my life? And I've read recently, people, even in secular life, when they think about the fact that life is temporary, and there's a beginning and end. At least this life and this body is temporary. And they keep that in mind as a priority, that remember, I'm only here for a few days. In geological time, it's that fast. When I have that perspective, then my life takes much deeper meaning. And the stress of life, the gains, the losses, reversals of fortune, everything takes on a relative state, because I'm thinking, I'm just here for a while. When the pandemic first started, one of the phrases that people gravitated towards was, this too shall pass. Having a wider perspective. So one of the first teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam is, remember, we're here temporarily, and work towards the end. And as it turns out, when we try to remember Krishna in our daily life, our life becomes happy. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ananyas chintayanto mam yejana paripasate tesham yuktanam yoga kshemam mahamyaham. To those who think of me in all their work. And they're dedicated to me in the way that they work. I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. Those who depend on Krishna, who think of Krishna, who pray to Krishna, they're not in anxiety because they know I'm not the controller. Another point from Stephen Covey, he said, there's a circle of influence that we have, and it's very tiny. There's a very few things that we can actually do something about in this world. And then there's a huge, ever-increasing circle of our circle of concern. And once we go out of the small circle of our circle of influence into the circle of concern, we're in constant anxiety. So the Srimad Bhagavatam recommends work within your circle of influence. Remember what your purpose is. And you'll feel satisfied. You'll feel happy. Not only that, you'll be effective in life. So the Srimad Bhagavatam tells us the truth from the very beginning, that we're here temporarily, and the ultimate goal of life is to remember Krishna. So this is called reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. And as far as service goes, let's just talk about that for a moment. There's many kinds of service, really good services that we can do for others, right? Shukadeva Goswami tells Parikshit Maharaj in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's one great service you can do. Out of all the good services, the great service is to help somebody come back to spiritual consciousness. Because as long as we're attached to the body, and I think that the life means to try to get comfortable in the material world, I'll never be happy. And even if I make somebody a little more comfortable, if I give somebody, like let's say a fish who jumps out of the water and is walking down the road. Have you ever seen this? Here in Toronto, you don't have that so much? Maybe Vancouver. If we were to make the fish happy, what could we give the fish to make it happy outside its pond? No, say some other material things. Veronica? That's the ultimate solution. I want to hear a few ridiculous solutions. How about if we give the fish a hat? How about if we give the fish a car? A Tesla? How about if we give the fish a loan? Okay, what would you like to give the fish? A fire truck? A motorcycle? A motorcycle? Okay, we're going to give the fish a hat, a motorcycle, yes? A bungalow. Fish like bungalows. See, kids know how to answer these questions. Yes? Give them a house. A big house, though, here on, what is this street? Roxborough. Roxborough. Give the fish a house on Roxborough. These aren't houses, they're compounds. Is the fish happy? I don't know what that is. So, the fish doesn't care for hats, doesn't care for gasoloma, whatever that is, doesn't want a house on Roxbury or whatever that street that is, Roxborough. Fish wants to go ahead, your turn, Veronica, in the pond. We also want to go back in the pond. We only feel satisfied when we go back. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is that pond. And the way to revive, recharge one's spiritual awareness is very simple. It's written in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It says, Shrinvatam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyan taksto hibadrani vidunoti suhritsatam. And that is, just by listening to the stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam, they go into the ear and into the heart, and the heart becomes purified of all the obstacles that keep us back from seeing reality and actually being happy. Now, I want you to check something really quick. Can you work with me for a diagnostic for a second? Okay, 2 people said yes. Everybody else? Okay. I want you to just check and see if you still have 2 ears. Check. Check. Are they there? Okay. Now just notice, you don't have to be demonstrative about it if you have a tongue. Notice, maybe bite on it a little bit. Do you have a tongue? Okay, 3 or 4 of you still do? All right. These are free. They're thrown in with the human body. They throw it in for free. Here, give you a new human body. I'll give you 2 free ears. And if you look at your ear in the mirror when you go home, you'll be surprised. Don't look too long because you think, I look like an alien. Because ears, they have all these convolutions. They're meant to catch sound, and it goes inside. So the Bhagavatam's solution to life is very simple, because Occam's razor says the right answer is usually the simplest answer. So the simple answer the Srimad Bhagavatam gives for all the problems of life, including the D word, death. Sorry, it's a family show, hate to bring it up. The D word, which is what the Srimad Bhagavatam starts with, solved. How? Very simple process. Listen to Srimad Bhagavatam. If you listen to it, the sound goes in these specially designed ears, thrown in for free with the human body. You don't even need somebody to read it to, because you can do it yourself with your tongue. And when you do that, then your whole life transforms from the inside out. Your motive in life changes. Your awareness of the difference between your body and yourself changes. And most important of all, you become aware of Krishna. Because Krishna is there within the heart. And He's the one who helps us. He is the one who helps us every single second, just to be aware that there's sunshine, that I'm in a body and I can move my body. It's all coming from His grace. So if we turn our attention to Krishna just by listening to the Bhagavatam, then the transformation automatically takes place in our life from the inside out. And everything turns to spirit from matter. So I recommend the Srimad Bhagavatam. My teacher, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, lived in Vrindavan for about 11 years before he came to the West. And he wouldn't leave until he had an English translation that he trusted of the Srimad Bhagavatam. You know how he got one? Does anybody want to guess? How he got a trusted version of the Srimad Bhagavatam? Okay, we got a few ringers in here who already know the answer. Anybody who doesn't know the answer back there, who didn't hear that? How did he get a trustworthy version of the Srimad Bhagavatam that he could share in New York City, San Francisco, Santa Fe, Montreal, and Toronto? Okay, I'd like somebody to give an answer. One person.
He made it.
Hey, wait a minute. You're a ringer. Yes, madam, you're smiling. You should say. What do you think he did? What did she say? He learned it himself. And
He translated it.
he wrote it himself. He made the translation. He was a scholar. He knew Bengali, he knew English, he knew Sanskrit, and he sat with the commentaries from the great acharyas who had written extensively. And then he translated in English and he gave commentary to the first canto. Later on, he completed the Bhagavatam all the way up to the 10th canto. His disciples, who he had trained painstakingly over many years, then took on the task themselves to finish the rest of it. So the Srimad Bhagavatam now is available in English. And it's something that is a treasure of India. There's a history in India that various outside influences have come to India and also taken much of the wealth of India, right? There's one thing they forgot to take. My spiritual master said this when he first went to London. And the news reporters came up and said, "Why did you come here?" And he said, "All of you came to India and you took away all the wealth, stopped all the the mills, supplanted them with others, took away jewels, they're still in the British Museum. You forgot something. You forgot to take the real wealth. That's the spiritual knowledge of India. And I've brought that to add to your collection. Srimad Bhagavatam is so powerful that we have a program we're now distributing it all over the world in languages like Mandarin, Spanish, Zulu. We have French, German, Czech, Arabic. It's amazing that it's going out all over the world. And in the last few years, we've placed Srimad Bhagavatam in many of the small villages in India that are being affected by many different ideologies. And you know what happens? As soon as the Srimad Bhagavatam goes into the learning hall in the small villages, everyone rallies around the Bhagavatam and the entire village becomes vibrant with spiritual knowledge. So I'm advocating for Srimad Bhagavatam. It is the proven method, according to the great acharyas, for surcharging one's spiritual life. And you can live in a house, you can live in an apartment, you can live in a van, you can live in the forest. But if you hear Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll be happy from inside out, and everything in your life will become adjusted. Thank you very much. My wife said, you just have to have it in your house. I think I left that part out. So, everyone take a Srimad Bhagavatam and put it in your house. Now, people nowadays, they get a house, and if there's 2 rooms, then they have 2 televisions. If there's 3 rooms, they have 3 televisions. So, if you have a house with more than 1 room, get more than 1 set of Srimad Bhagavatam. Just a suggestion. It's an idea.